She said my name like it meant something heavier than usual. Slower, careful, almost testing how it sounded between us. I looked up. She was standing by the sink, sleeves rolled, water running over her hands. There was nothing dramatic about the moment, but something about the way she didn't meet my eyes made it feel like the air had thickened. Her name's Elena, my friend's older sister, mid-40s maybe, the kind of woman who carries quiet with her, the kind that fills a room without needing to speak. She's got that rare kind of stillness that makes people lower their voices without realizing why. I'd been around her house plenty of times before, group dinners, weekend hangouts. But that evening, it was just the two of us. My friend had left for work, said he'd be back in an hour. I'd stay behind to help fix a cabinet hinge that wouldn't shut. Nothing complicated. Nothing worth remembering. Except that I do. The radio hummed softly in the background. Something old and slow. She moved closer to hand me a screwdriver, her fingers brushing mine. Not even a full touch, more like the ghost of one. But it landed. "Thanks," I said, my voice catching a bit. She nodded. "You're good with your hands," she said, half smiling, then frowned as if she'd said too much. "I try, I manage." My palms were suddenly damp. The silence stretched, warm and uneasy. She leaned against the counter, drying her hands. "You've grown up," she said quietly, eyes flicking toward me and away again. Didn't realize how much until now. I wasn't sure how to answer that. She looked tired, but not in a weak way, more like someone who'd been holding too much for too long. There were faint lines near her mouth that deepened when she smiled, though she wasn't smiling now. "I didn't think you noticed," I said. "I noticed more than you think." It wasn't the words that got me. It was how she said them, like an admission she hadn't meant to let slip. I tried to focus on the cabinet hinge, but my thoughts were nowhere near it. The air smelled faintly of soap and rain. She'd opened a window earlier, and a cool draft brushed against the back of my neck. I could feel her behind me, not touching, but close enough that I could hear the soft shift of fabric when she crossed her arms. "Need me to hold it steady?" she asked. "Yeah, maybe," I said too quickly. She stepped closer, one hand resting on the doorframe, the other steadying the wood beside mine. The space between us shrank, just enough to feel the warmth of her skin, to hear the small hitch of her breath when my arm moved. Neither of us spoke. The cabinet door was fixed, technically, but I kept turning the screwdriver, slow, deliberate. When she finally spoke again, her voice was quieter. "You didn't just come here to help him, did you?" I froze. I turned to look at her, but she didn't move, didn't smile. She just watched me, eyes steady but soft. That look people give when they already know the answer, but want to hear you say it anyway. "I." The front door opened. Her brother's voice carried down the hallway. "Hey, you two still here?" Elena stepped back first, quick, wiping her hands again even though they were already dry. "Yeah," she said, louder now, light again. "We're done." But her eyes met mine one last time before she turned away, and the look she gave me said the exact opposite. The next few times I saw her, nothing was said about that night, but something had changed. Elena's voice, once light and teasing, had taken on a quieter rhythm. She still made coffee for everyone when we came by, still smiled when my friend joked, but sometimes when she handed me a mug, her finger stayed a second too long against mine. It was never obvious. Just enough to make me wonder if she noticed it too. She'd been married once. I knew that much. A story mentioned in passing. The kind people tell with a shrug to hide how much it still hurts. Her husband had left years ago. For someone simpler, she'd said once, half laughing, half not. Since then, she lived alone in the same house, busying herself with work, gardening, and pretending it was all enough. My friend said she liked her space. But the way she sometimes stood in her doorway at night, lights low, told a different story. As for me, I was 26, still figuring out who I was. I'd had a few relationships, mostly short, mostly surface level. None that felt like this. This slow pull I couldn't name, this way my stomach tightened when she looked at me too long. She must have known. She was too perceptive not to. One afternoon, I stopped by to drop off some tools I borrowed. She was sitting on the back steps, reading, sunlight catching strands of her hair. She looked up when she heard me and smiled, small but real. "Hey," I said. "Hey yourself," she replied. "You return things faster than most people. Can't give you a reason to ban me from borrowing again." She laughed softly, the kind that stayed in the air after it ended. I sat beside her, not too close, but not far either. We talked about her garden, about my job, about nothing important. Still, every pause felt weighted. I watched the way her fingers traced the rim of her glass. She looked at me once, then quickly away. "I forget how young you are sometimes," she said, almost to herself. "I don't," I said, before I could stop it. She glanced at me, not angry, not amused, just searching. "You shouldn't say things like that." "I didn't mean—" "You did," she interrupted softly. "You just don't know what it means yet." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was something else, like both of us were standing on the edge of something that didn't have a name yet. A breeze moved through the yard. Her book slipped from her lap. I bent to pick it up, and when I handed it back, her hand covered mine. Not by accident. Neither of us moved. The air thickened again, the same charged stillness from the kitchen, only deeper now. Her thumb brushed my knuckles once, then withdrew like she'd touched fire. "Thank you," she said quietly, looking down at the pages, but her voice trembled just slightly. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words stayed in my throat, and for the first time, she didn't pull away right after. She just stayed there, our shoulders barely touching, the sun slipping lower, like both of us had agreed, without saying it, to stop pretending nothing was happening. It happened a week later, a quiet Sunday, the kind that starts slow and stays that way. My friend had gone out early to meet someone, leaving me to wait at the house until he got back. Elena was in the kitchen again, barefoot, hair tied loosely, a few strands falling over her face as she leaned over the counter. She didn't look surprised to see me. "You're early," she said, rinsing a bowl. "Didn't feel like staying home." She smiled faintly, not looking up. "Or maybe you didn't feel like being alone." There was the kind of line that sounded casual, but wasn't. I stepped closer, setting my phone on the counter. "Maybe not." She wiped her hands and turned toward me. For a second, neither of us moved. The clock ticked somewhere behind us, slow and loud. Her voice dropped. "You shouldn't stay long." "Do you want me to go?" She hesitated. That half second said everything. Instead of answering, she reached for a dish towel. "You always ask questions like that." "Like what?" "The kind that don't have a safe answer." She brushed past me to hang the towel. The space was too small, and when she turned, her arm brushed against my chest. I didn't step back. Neither did she. Her perfume was faint, clean, a little citrus, familiar now. She looked up at me, eyes steady, waiting for something I didn't know how to give. "I don't want to cause trouble," I said quietly. "You already are." Before I could reply, my phone buzzed. A message. I didn't look at it, but she did, her eyes flicking down, quick. "Your friend?" she asked. "Yeah." She nodded, looking suddenly distant. "You should answer." "I don't want to." "Then you should leave before you forget why you shouldn't want to." She tried to move around me again, but I reached out not to stop her, just instinct. My hand catching her wrist. Her pulse jumped under my fingers. "Elena." Her name barely came out. She didn't pull away right away. Her lips parted like she was about to say something, then shut again. The moment stretched, heavy, full of everything we weren't saying. "Don't," she whispered finally. "Don't what?" "Make me forget how young you are." Her eyes were wet, but she wasn't crying. My hand loosened, but I didn't let go. She looked at me, really looked, like she was memorizing something she shouldn't. Then a knock at the door. We both flinched. She stepped back fast, wiping her hands on her jeans. My friend's voice carried through the hall. "Hey, you in there?" "Yeah," I called out, throat dry. Elena turned away, but not before her fingers brushed mine one last time. A small, wordless touch that said, "Don't forget this." When the door opened, She was smiling again, casual, untouched. Only I knew her hands were still shaking. And mine were too. Rain had started sometime in the afternoon. Slow, steady, the kind that turns a world gray and quiet. I was supposed to pick up a few things my friend had left behind before he left town for a week. He'd texted Elena that I'd swing by. She said it was fine. When she opened the door, her expression was unreadable. You came. You said I could. She nodded, stepping aside. Didn't think you actually would. Most people avoid me when it rains. Why? Too still. Makes people uncomfortable. I almost said I like still, but stopped myself. The house was dim. The lights were off except for the small lamp near the couch. A book lay open on the armrest. Her reading glasses folded on top. She'd been waiting for something. Or maybe for no one at all. I won't stay long, I said. Good, she said softly. Then after a pause, you never do. Something in her tone, that edge between sarcasm and ache, made me turn. You sound disappointed. Do I? You do. She looked at me for a long moment. Then, almost imperceptibly, she shook her head. You shouldn't say things like that to me. The rain hit harder against the window. The sound filled the silence between us. I moved closer, slow enough that she could step back if she wanted. She didn't. Elena, I said quietly, tell me to stop. Her breath caught. I've told myself to stop, she murmured. That hasn't worked either. The distance between us disappeared. Not a kiss, not yet, just a space where one could happen. Her hand lifted, almost without her realizing it, brushing a drop of rain from my hair. Then her palm stayed there, against my cheek, as if she'd forgotten what she was doing. I keep thinking this is nothing, she whispered. Just a phase for you. Curiosity. It's not, I said. I wish it was. Her thumb grazed my jaw. And when you realize what people will say, when my brother finds out, I'll deal with it. You think it's that simple? No, I said, but I still came. That silenced her. Her hand dropped, but not all the way. It lingered against my collar, fingertips brushing the edge of my shirt. My heart was loud enough I was sure she could hear it. You don't know what you're asking for, she said, voice trembling. I'm not asking, I said, barely above a whisper. I just can't pretend anymore. Her breath hitched. She looked up, eyes searching mine, as if looking for a reason not to cross the line. She didn't find one. The room felt smaller, the air too warm, the rain louder. Her face tilted up. Mine leaned down. Don't, she breathed. But she didn't move. And just as our lips almost met, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway shattered it. She froze. I did too. Elena, a voice called from outside. We stepped apart, fast, but not fast enough to erase what almost happened. Her hand lingered at her chest, like she was holding in a heartbeat that had just escaped. We can't, she started, but her voice broke. I know, I said, but we already did. The next morning, I told myself not to go back. I told myself it would only make things worse. But by late afternoon, I was standing at her gate again. Rain gone, the air still smelling like wet pavement and lavender. I didn't even have an excuse this time. When she opened the door, her expression wasn't surprise. It was something sharper. You shouldn't be here, she said. I know. Then why are you? I didn't answer. I just looked at her, at the faint color beneath her eyes, at the hair she hadn't bothered to tie up. She sighed, stepping aside. You're stubborn. You always were. I walked in. The same lamp was on. Same book still open. Only now there was a second glass on the table, half empty. Were you expecting someone? I asked. My brother stopped by earlier, she said, watching me too closely. He asked if something was going on between us. I froze. What did you tell him? Her jaw tightened. I told him no. The silence stretched long enough that I almost believed her. But then her voice dropped quieter. He said he heard us yesterday. In the kitchen. My chest went cold. He didn't hear everything, she said quickly. But enough. The memory flashed her whisper, her hand on my wrist, the almost. What happens now? I asked. I don't know, she said. He thinks you've been interested in me for a while, and maybe he's not wrong. Her tone wasn't accusing. If anything, it sounded like she wanted me to deny it, to give her an out she could still believe in. But I didn't. Maybe I have, I said. Her breath caught. She looked away, then back at me. Her face flushed. You can't say that. It's the truth. Truth doesn't always make things better. I'm not trying to make it better. She moved past me toward the window, but her hand trembled when she touched the curtain. The distance between us stretched thin, invisible but alive. When she turned, her voice was unsteady. You think this is brave? Coming here? Saying this? No, I said. I think it's stupid. But I couldn't stop. She laughed once, short, broken. You're too young to know what not stopping costs. Then show me, I said. That made her go still, completely still. Her eyes softened and she shook her head, stepping closer until I could feel her breath against my throat. You don't know what you're asking for, she whispered again. I know what I'm standing in front of, I said. She closed her eyes. My brother told me I'd ruin you. Too late. Her hand lifted, trembling, slow, stopping just short of my face. Her fingers hovered, barely touching my skin, like she was memorizing the heat of mistake before she made it. Then she stepped back, suddenly, like the moment burned. I need time, she said, but her voice sounded like she didn't believe it. I nodded. You've had years. That made her flinch. And yet, she didn't tell me to leave. We just stood there, breathing the same uneven air, knowing the next time one of us reached out, it wouldn't stop halfway. Evening light spilled across the floor, soft and gold, catching in the dust that drifted between us. Elena stood by the table, her hand on the back of a chair, as if she needed something steady. I was by the doorway, one step inside, and already too far gone to turn back. Neither of us had planned this. Neither of us could stop it anymore. You shouldn't be here, she said again, but the words were barely a whisper, no conviction behind them. I didn't come to talk. I know. Her fingers tightened around the chair. That's what scares me. The quiet between us thickened, filled with every moment we hadn't said what we meant. I took a step forward. She didn't move. Another step, and I could see the rise and fall of her breathing. The air felt warm, charged, every sound amplified, even the brush of my shoes against the floor. Elena, I said softly. She looked up, eyes shining in the fading light. If I touch you, I don't think I'll be able to stop. Then don't stop. Her lips parted like she might argue, but instead she exhaled, slow, and the air trembled between us. I reached out, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. She closed her eyes, and for a second, she leaned into my hand. Barely, just enough to break something fragile and quiet that had been holding us apart. This isn't fair, she said, voice unsteady. Maybe not, I said, but it's real. Her hand found mine, tentative, fingers cold at first. Then she laced them together, holding on tighter than she meant to. You'll regret this, she whispered. Maybe, but not tonight. That made her laugh, small, breathless, the kind of sound that felt like surrender. She took one step closer, until the space left between us was only air and hesitation. I've tried to be careful, she said. You make that impossible. Good. Her eyes opened, and there it was, everything she'd been hiding. The fear, the want, the ache of years spent pretending she didn't still need to feel alive. The rain had started again outside. A faint sound, almost kind. She reached up, her hand trembling as it rested against my neck. The touch was barely there, but it burned. I can't promise you this won't hurt, she said. I'm not asking for promises. The next moment wasn't dramatic. No sudden music. No words left to fill it. Just her hand at my jaw, my breath catching, and that slow, certain pull that made the world narrow down to the space between us. Her lips brushed mine, once, like a question, then again, deeper, like an answer she'd been trying not to give. When she finally pulled back, her eyes stayed closed. Now you know, she whispered. Yeah, I said. Now I do. We stood there, both breathless, both knowing what it cost and what it meant. No more pretending, no more maybe, just the truth, finally spoken through touch. Morning came quiet, the kind of quiet that feels earned. The rain had stopped sometime during the night, leaving the world washed in new. Light slipped through the blinds, cutting soft lines across the living room floor. Elena sat curled on the couch, legs tucked beneath her, wearing a sweater too big for her, or maybe it was his brother's old one. I stood in the kitchen doorway, unsure if I should speak first, but she looked up before I decided, and the small, tired smile that crossed her face was enough. "Coffee?" she asked, voice low. "Always." She poured for both of us, careful, steady, as if gentleness could undo the things we'd finally stopped running from. When she handed me the cup, our fingers brushed again. This time, neither of us pulled away. For a while, we just sat in that silence, letting it stretch comfortably. "I didn't sleep much," she said finally. "Me either." Her eyes drifted to the window, watching the soft light shift. "I kept thinking about last night. I waited. I spent years convincing myself I didn't need anyone," she said. "That being alone meant being strong. But you," she paused, searching for the right word, "you made me feel seen again, and I wasn't ready for that." I took a slow breath. "You don't have to be." She looked at me then, fully, openly, the guardedness gone. "You still think you know what you're doing?" "No," I said, "but I know what I want." That got a real smile. Small, but real. The distance between us had never felt smaller. She leaned forward, her hand resting against my knee, thumb tracing a slow, thoughtful circle there. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I know." Her fingers tightened slightly. "And you're not." "Every second," I said, "but it doesn't change anything." She studied me for a long moment, then nodded, like she decided to believe me. I reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. She didn't move, just let me, her eyes soft in that early light. Then she leaned in, not for a kiss, not this time, just to rest her forehead against mine. The warmth of her breath filled the space between us. "I don't know where this goes," she whispered. "Neither do I," said. "But for now, it's enough." Her hand slipped into mine, fingers threading together easily, naturally, like something that had been waiting to happen. We sat there, the two of us, coffee cooling, sun rising, the world outside still damp and quiet, and for once it didn't feel wrong. It just felt honest. Elena exhaled softly, a sound halfway between relief and disbelief. "You're not just here for him anymore," she murmured. I smiled. "No, I'm here for you." She laughed then, quietly, but it filled the room in a way that felt like peace. And when she leaned into me, her head resting on my shoulder, I knew that whatever came next, we'd already crossed the hardest part, the fear of being known. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?